While George Washington was surviving Braddock's defeat in America, another young commander 8,000 miles away was changing history. June 23, 1757, the Battle of Plassey. In a single afternoon with more treachery than tactics, Robert Clive's East India Company army defeated the Nawab of Bengal and unlocked the vast wealth that would fund Britain's global 7 Years' War victories. This wasn't just a battle, it was the day Britain's Indian Empire began. On June 23, 1757, the fate of an empire was decided in the heart of Bengal, where a clash of ambition, betrayal, and power would change the course of history. The Battle of Plassey was not just a fight for land. It was the moment when the British East India Company, once a mere mercantile entity, rose to become a mighty military force in India. Led by the astute Robert Clive, the British forces faced the formidable Siraj-ud-Daulah, the proud Nawab of Bengal, who was determined to defend his kingdom's independence against this growing foreign threat. Yet the battle was not one of sheer force, it was the quiet whispers of betrayal that turned the tide. With the Nawab's own generals secretly turning against him, the British seized victory but at a cost, a fragile and bloody victory that tore apart the heart of Bengal. For the British this was more than a battle, it was the moment they grasped power and began their dominance over the subcontinent. For Siraj-ud-Daulah, it was a brutal and tragic downfall, marking the end of Bengal's sovereignty. The battle, fought in the shadow of ambition and treachery, would resonate through the ages as the pivotal moment that began the long, cruel march of British colonial rule across India. The Battle of Plassey did not just alter the fate of Bengal, it sealed the fate of a subcontinent, setting in motion the rise of an empire built on conquest, and forever marking the beginning of the end of India's independence. In 1756, as Siraj-ud-Daulah ascended the throne of Bengal, tensions between the British East India Company and the French East India Company reached a boiling point. The young Nawab, determined to protect Bengal's sovereignty, adopted a pro-French stance, aligning himself with his European rivals. His anger toward British interference grew, particularly over the fortifications at Fort William in Calcutta. In a bold and brutal move, the Nawab captured Calcutta and the fort, subjecting 146 British prisoners to a fate that would become infamous in history, the Black Hole of Calcutta. In a confined, stifling dungeon, 123 British prisoners suffocated and perished, their desperate cries serving as a horrifying symbol of British humiliation. The British, now thirsting for revenge, quickly mobilized their forces under Robert Clive. In February 1757, Clive led an assault to reclaim Calcutta, and by March the British forces triumphed over the French fort of Chandernagore. The stage was set for the final confrontation, one that would not only alter the fate of Bengal, but also shift the balance of power between the British and the French in India, leading to a decisive showdown at the Battle of Plassey, where fate would favor the British. The stage was set for a dramatic clash at Plassey, where the fate of Bengal, and ultimately India, would be decided. As Clive advanced toward Murshidabad, he faced the daunting force of Siraj-ud-Daulah, the Nawab of Bengal, who commanded an imposing army of 50,000 men, including 16,000 cavalry and a French officered artillery corps of 50 field guns. Clive, however, had only 3,000 troops, including 2,100 Indian sepoys and 800 European soldiers, with just 10 field guns. Despite the odds, Clive's strategy and alliances proved decisive. The wealthy Jugat Seth family of Bengal, fearing the loss of their prosperous European trade under the Nawab's rule, secretly supported the British. They also brokered the defection of Mir Jafar, a key commander in the Nawab's army, who was promised the throne of Bengal in exchange for his betrayal. On the day of the battle, the weather played a crucial role. As the two forces faced off near the village of Plassey, artillery exchanges ensued, but the heavens opened, drenching the battlefield. The British swiftly protected their gunpowder, but the Nawab's forces failed to do so, rendering their artillery useless. Clive, with impeccable timing, launched a devastating artillery barrage when the Nawab's cavalry charged, sending the attackers into a panic. Then the real turning point came. Mir Jafar, now allied with the British, withdrew from the battle, leaving the Nawab's flank exposed. As Siraj-ud-Daulah's forces retreated under fire, they abandoned their artillery, which Clive's men seized and used to bombard the remaining positions. With no response, the battle turned in favor of the British. The Nawab, realizing defeat was imminent, fled the field but was captured by troops loyal to Mir Jafar, imprisoned and eventually executed. The British, with only 22 dead and 50 wounded, had decisively defeated the Nawab's forces, who suffered some 500 dead and many wounded. The victory at Plassey marked the beginning of British dominance in India, as it solidified the British East India Company's control over Bengal, paving the way for their eventual rule over the entire subcontinent. The aftermath of the Battle of Plassey reshaped the fate of Bengal and the Indian subcontinent. Mir Jafar, though appointed Nawab, was a mere puppet ruler. His authority diminished as he was forced to cede much of Bengal's control to the British. His discontent led him to secretly provoke the Dutch to attack the British, a rebellion that ended with his ousting after their victory at the Battle of Chinchura. Meanwhile, the French lost all their holdings in Bengal, retaining only Chandernagore as a remnant of their former power. Robert Clive, the architect of this monumental victory, was appointed governor of Bengal by the British East India Company. In 1765, Clive secured the invaluable right to collect taxes and revenues for the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II, further consolidating British power in the region. This control over Bengal's riches fueled the East India Company's expansion, enabling it to amass unparalleled wealth, finance further conquests, and enhance its global trading monopoly. Clive himself returned to Britain as a wealthy man, honored with a peerage for his service. The British East India Company's growing dominance over India was cemented with pivotal victories in subsequent years. The Battle of Buxar in 1764 secured Bengal and Bihar. The defeat of Tipu Sultan in the Fourth Mysore War in 1799 solidified control in the south, and the Second Sikh War in 1848–49 marked British dominance in the Punjab. The seeds planted by Clive at Plassey blossomed into an empire that would last for nearly 2 centuries, shaping the course of Indian history and British imperial power. Plassey proved that 18th-century wars were won with silver as much as steel. The £2.5 million looted from Bengal, over $500 million today, bankrolled Britain's French and Indian war campaigns. But at what cost? The famine that followed killed millions. Was this the dawn of British India, or its original sin? Debate below, and don't forget to explore how this connects to Washington's war in our 7 Years' War playlist.